was MJK. I can't remember if she told me what her name was. But she told me that she was doing this pattern. I'll take it out of its envelope because it's not easy to see with the reflection. She was doing this. She wanted to do this pattern, or she was doing this pattern, and she was finding it quite difficult to do. And could I do either explain how to assemble it or do a sew along? And of course, I've been on holiday, so I haven't had a chance to do it. First of all, I don't know whether she's referring to that style or this style or this style. Already I can see what your complication is, because when I go to this piece here, I'm doing this one is described as being version D. You can see up there, version D, which is that one there. And when I look at version D, so I need pieces 3 and 4 for D. This is the back, which is 4. But it says view B and E. It doesn't say anywhere view D. So there's one complication. If you're not used to sewing, you're immediately thinking, well, I haven't got a piece for a piece for D, but it is number 4, and that's number 4 there. So that's what you need for the back. And then the front says we need number 3. There's number 3, but it says view B and E. View B and E. Again, confusing. There's no view D. And then I want 1 and 2. View D, 1 and 2. And here's the yoke. Let's go for yoke 1. Where are we? Yoke 1. Yoke 1. Yoke front. And it says view A, B and E. There's no view D on it. So obviously, if you're a new sewer you're going to wonder what is going on. Then this is the yoke back. Yoke back, I need number 2. Yoke back, number 2. And it says view A, B and E. No mention of view D. So these are actually the pieces you want. Go for the number rather than what it says views. What you need is, according to this, I need the 3, the 4, the 1 and the 2, and I need number 8. And this is number 8. And this one, they've got right. Number 8, front and back band, C and D. So that might be the confusion that you have, because the pieces of the patterns don't match what you're looking for on the instructions. Well, they do match in the number, but they don't match on the letters. So this is the New Look 6871. It's no longer available as a new pattern, but you can find it sometimes on eBay or Etsy or any other services where people sell vintage or older patterns. They've only stopped producing this, just I think it's New Look stopped being made. But the pattern that I'm doing is that one. A lot of other people are doing this one with the sleeves, and so what I will do is I'll talk you through that one, and then when we come to the stage where those sleeves have to be added, then I'll tell you what to do. The pattern pieces are basically these pattern pieces, and you would need to look here to see which pattern pieces you need. So if you're doing view A, which is the one with the sleeves there, then these are the pieces that you need. You need pattern pieces 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and piece 6 is a cut of elastic. So the 2 fabrics I've used is this cotton that I have, and this blue fabric, which is probably nothing like it, but it's got a touch of orange in it there, which matches the orange there. I wasn't going to buy anything special because this is just an example to show you how it's going to go. That's going to be the yoke, and this is going to be the bottom bit that goes at the bottom, and that's going to be the body in the middle. So first of all, what we need to do is, you will see that from the front, as I mentioned before, is gathered at the front there, and the back has gathers as well. So the first thing we've got to do is to do the gather stitches, and the gathers so you can identify, before I tell you about the gathers, so you can identify which is the front and the back, because once you've taken them off the pattern it's hard to tell. But the front is the one that when you match the folds up there has a lower armpit line there, because that is going to go, your back is higher than your front. So this is the front, and if you want to make, the thing I always do is I put something on, a couple of pins there, just so I can see that that's the front and the other one's the back. Now the yoke's the same, there's two yokes. This is the back yoke, I believe that's the back yoke, yes that's the back yoke, and obviously the back, it's easily identified because it has that shape, and the front yoke has more of a V going down to it there, more of a curve going down, so that's easy to identify. We've got a front and we've got a you had to cut two pieces out, one outer face, one outer fabric, one inner facing, and what we have to do is we have to interface the fabric. So I'm going to interface the top fabric, not the undersurface fabric. So this top one I'm going to put some interfacing on there, and then I'm going to go on to the next stage. The next stage, we take our front and back, open them out, and I've got a notch there and a notch there, and I'm going to do a long running stitch in 2 rows of long running stitch between those 2 notches, and that's going to be the gathering part. The same will apply on this one. I shall take the back, remember the back has the higher armpit there, and I'm going to take this one which has 2 cuts. Where are the cuts? One there and one not showing up very well there, so I need to put that back in the fold. Obviously when I've done the notch it's gone on one side and not on the other, so let's just make that notch a bit better, like that. Where's the notch? Where was it? There. It's better to do a notch outwards than a notch inwards, but when you're a beginner, so it's better to do a notch outwards than a notch inwards. But because I know what I'm doing, I've done an inside notch. So gathering stitch there, gathering stitch along the top of this one. Where's the top here? Make sure you're getting the top, gathering stitch there and there. If you want to be certain you know where you're going, put a pin there and a pin there, so you can see that that's where you've got to gather there. Remember I've got 2 pins here because that tells me it's the front. And then let's put a pin here and a pin there, lost that again, and we'll gather that, do the gathering lines there. I've done the gathering stitches there. I can now take those pins out because they're no longer needed, and remember the deep cut armhole is the front, so I'm going to take that face up, and just so I can show you, I've actually interfaced this facing with a fabric interfacing. It's an iron-on interfacing, and it looks like this. I like it better than the paper type version of interfacing. It's got glue on the back of it. You do have to use a very hot iron, and you have to leave it for a little bit to settle on, to stick on. But this is it here, and I've covered the whole lot, and it's got this lovely, it's not stiff, it's got a nice feel to it. So now on this here I have a little notch, tiny little notch there that I've made. It's not opening very well because of the interfacing, just a little bit there. I've got a little notch there, and then I should have another one on the other side. Where's the other notch? Well, if you can't find it, put the 2 together like that, find one notch which is there, and the other notch should be, oh there it is, but it's not showing, so the other notch is there. So I've got 2 little notches, and I have to put right sides together, and one notch goes here. Where's that notch gone to? There, that's a notch. One notch goes there, matches those two notches, and I'll put a pin there. And then that goes to the end there, we pin that, and we have, I'm just putting it that way. And the same on the other side. So now I've got that gathered, and you can see it's got a gathered effect there, and I can pull this thread out now because I don't need it. Pull all these gathered threads out. Okay, so we've now got this like there, take that thread off there, and that's looking quite nice there. That's the front. I'm going to do the same with the back. So I now have the back facing on, and I've got the front facing, and what I'm going to do is put the shoulder seams together like that, and I'm going to sew along the shoulder seams on both of these, on the front, on both sides rather. And then I'm going to do the same with these facings. I'm going to take these facings and I'm going to sew the shoulder seam right sides together there, and have them sewn there at the shoulder seams as well, and then we'll press them all. So I now have my front and back joined together and my front and back facing joined together. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to put the front and back facing, which is the front, that's the back and that's the back, right sides together, and I'm going to match the shoulder seams. Match those shoulder seams. Let's get those right first. Match these. Put a pin through there. I like to match them like that first, and match that of the shoulder seam there, like so. Excellent. And then I'm going to pin all the way around the neck edge. Now if you were doing the other view, there's a view where there's a V here, but for this one you just stitch right the way around the neckline. I have now pinned all the way around my neckline. Get this out the way. And I'm going to sew all the way around there. And then what I will do, I'll snip it, I'll trim it and then snip it, and I'll turn it the right way around. So I've done that, and now I'm going to trim around it, and then I'm going to snip along so that it'll bend, so that it'll turn better. So I'm trimming quite close to the stitching, not too close, about half a centimetre. And then I'll turn it to the inside, and then once I've got that positioned, I'll pin it and then press it. You want it so that the seam, this is the outside, that's the inside facing. You want the facing just to be inside, so that it's not actually riding on the edge. It's inside there, just a fraction, about 1 millimetre in, and do that all the way around. It sometimes helps if you've got a bit of water and you dip your fingers in, and then you can roll it in your hands. This is in the right position. I'm now going to press it, and what I'll do is I'll take the pins out and press that area, take that pin out, press that area, and go round pressing it. So let's get I have here a little ironing board, which is very handy for doing this sort of thing, and we shall press that like that. Next we turn it inside out, and what we're going to do is we're going to get that to lie fairly flat, there, like that, and we're going to pin that to just where the stitching is there, and like that. The facing is going to go along there. So it just covers or just meets where the stitching is there, underneath that stitching. I actually haven't pressed that way, so let's quickly give that a little bit of a press. And then sometimes I press these beforehand, other times I prefer not to. I prefer to feel the way it should go, because sometimes it needs that little bit of levelling out here. Do this one, that there, like that. You need it to be fairly flat here. And then turn it round and do the other part of the yoke, which is this side. So you do the same thing as before. You're going to have it so that it's lying just over and very close to where you've stitched it. Very close to stitches. Making certain to make that flat, nice and flat, so there's no puckers. Now then, what you're going to do is you're going to sew on this side, you're going to sew along that part there. But I'm personally, because you don't want to be missing any fabric, I'm going to hand tack round there just to make sure it all stays in place while I'm sewing. And then turn it round and do the other part of the yoke.
reflecting on this evening's sad news of the death of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II.
So I've stitched along there, and if I turn it over, you will see that the stitches show there. So I know that I can stitch along that line in the safe knowledge that I'm picking up both sides of the fabric. So I'm going to do that now. Now I've got a light blue colour thread in, but I think I might do it with orange. I might do that orange colour just to make it stand out. So the next task will be to sew down the side seams. I've got them pinned there. I've got pins on them, so I'm going to sew down the side seams. So I've sewn down the side seams and I've overlocked them with the overlocker. Not everyone has an overlocker, so the next best thing is to sew down your side seam. If you've got an ordinary sewing machine, you can do one of two things. For those who don't have an overlocker, this is an example. Unfortunately, I've done it in white thread, but you can see that, you might see there that I've done a straight stitch and I've got a raw edge there. What you can do is one of two things. If you've got zigzag, you can zigzag along there. You would do a zigzag that goes like that. The zigzag will just go along on the end of there. I've got white thread threaded up, so you won't notice it. The other alternative, if you don't have any zigzag, is pinking shears. Go along the edge of your fabric and go with pinking shears all the way along, but you mustn't let it cross the stitching. You mustn't let it cross the stitching, and by doing that, then there's less chance of it fraying and your fabric will last longer. So that is one way to do it if you don't have a zigzag. The other way you can do it is you could fold it over like that and top stitch down on the flat side. But that is perfectly just as good. The pinking shears are a great way to stop it from fraying. So I now have these the side seams sewn up. I've got to finish the ends off on the overlocking, and then I'll press that seam open. I'll press the seam open and I'll press the seam towards the back of the garment. And then next thing I need to do is add the bias binding round the armhole. I'm trying this on to see what it's like. It's looking good, but I am getting a little bit of bagginess here. So I want to pull that in a little bit at the top there to stop it from being as baggy. It's more on this side than it is on that side. So I'm going to take the seam in about an inch, half an inch on either side, just to pull it in a bit, and that will make it sit a bit better on the armhole. So for those who are doing the cap sleeve or the little double frilled one, then you have to take this pattern piece. It's the little half moony type thing. You need to hem the bottom of each one. If you're doing the double layer, then you hem the bottom of both, and then you need to double run your row of stitches along there. If I was doing the double one, if you're doing the single one, then you run your double row of stitches, and that's for gathering. You do a long machine stitch for that. And if it was this one that you're doing, then you basically pin this onto the pin the top one onto the bottom one, then do your running stitches, and then gather the whole lot together. Then once you've done that, you match your notches and you pin your top to your bodice. There's your bodice. Pin that sleeve to the bodice and then sew along there. And with both sleeves, the one that I'm doing, I'm going to put a bias binding all the way around. With the one with the frill, you push the frill back onto the shoulder and you do the same thing. You're going to bias bind all the way around. So you end up with a bias binding collar sort of thing inside, and then you've got your cap sleeve. This is the wrong side. You're looking at the inside of the garment there, and your bias binding will go all the way around there. In this case, which I'm going to do, the bias binding is going to go all the way around, and you'll see that explained on my video. That is a piece of a hole in the paper, so please excuse me. Some bias binding that I have on a roll. I've had it a long time, must be about 30 years old, and I've got to work my way through it. So I figured that's about the closest one I've got to that, and it's going to be inside this sleeve, so it won't make that much difference for it. So what I need to do, I need to make sure when I pull it out, sometimes there's a seam there. You can see the seam. That seam is this way, so this is the wrong side. Seam's that way, so this is the wrong side and that's the right side. So I measure, get a rough guesstimate of what my armhole seam was going to be. Let's lay it out properly like that. This is a rough guesstimate, and from here round there and back down again is I'm going to have plenty, if not more, too much of that length. So that's going to be one armhole. I'll do the same again for the second armhole. So that's 2 pieces of bias binding for my armhole. I have to remember that that one has that seam in, so this is the wrong side, that's the right side. And what I'm going to do first of all is I'm going to start at the bottom here where the under the arm seam is, and I'm going to go right sides together. That's going to be the wrong side, so right sides together, and I'm going to pin from there all the way around the armhole, about let's say about 1 centimetre. So I'll work my way around there. So I have this here and I have that there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold one part over like that, so it's back on itself, and I'm going to shorten it a bit to about 2 centimetres, 1 centimetre to 2 centimetres, and I'm going to pin it there like that. So that's like that. Then this one is going to go over like that, and I'm going to cut it about the same length there, so that I have this here, then that curls round, and that's going to be so that when that comes over there like that, you won't see it. You won't see the uncut edges. So I'm going to put that over there like that, and probably the best place that I would start would be to start about here and then go round there first. So I'm going to do that first. So to make my life easier on this machine, I've taken this off. It just works a bit better. Some of you won't have that privilege, but just try and make it so that it's as easy as possible for you to sew. This is the underarm seam. This is where I've got the bias together overlapping. I'll bring you in a bit closer. And basically, as I said, I'm going to start a little bit before that. I'm going to start there, and I'm going to start with my straight stitch, stop, reverse, and then come on forward again. Now I usually have a foot on my machine, a pedal on my machine, but I've taken it off, and I'm not sure I like this button idea, because I don't feel you can control it as good as you can with a foot. But let's see how we go with it. So I've got my bias binding on there, and I'm going to turn it in on itself like that and press it down. Press it on the inside, and then once I've done that, I'm going to turn that over again, and I'm going to do a second row of stitching. I'll do it from the other side the second row stitching to hold it in place. So the first thing we do is get the iron out, get my little felt pad, and this is the inside, that's the right side, and I'm going to press this bias binding to the inside so that it's got a little gap there, so you can see, don't know if you can just see, you won't be able to see that on the other side. You shouldn't be able to see it on the other side. So I press that away from the fabric, away from the edge rather, and I'll work my way all the way around, like so. It's always a case of getting it as flat as you can so that the fabric will press nicely. And there to here. Now there is a piece sticking out there, so I think I'm going to have to trim that bit away first before I do anything after this. But let's just get this bias binding pressed here. And pressing, when you press something, you really, I'm moving it from side to side a little bit like that, but that's fine. You basically are putting a lot of weight onto the seam to give it a good press. You're not ironing. Ironing is going that, pressing is just doing that over the seam to give it a good press. So I can, as I said, I can see there that there's a bit of fabric sticking out, so I'm going to cut that bit off and make sure I don't cut my bias off. And then that will be better, will lie better there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn that in on itself like that. And because it's biased, because it's been cut on the bias, it will stretch where the armhole, it'll give it that, this bias fabric will stretch a little bit diagonally, and it will make it lie better on the sleeve. So I go around and do that all the way around. So I've pinned all that all the way around there. If you're feeling confident enough, you can just start at the bottom and sew right round the edge, keeping as close to this edge as you can, making sure that your spool thread is going to be the one that's underneath. So you need to have your spool thread at least matching the fabric on the top. If you haven't got the right, if you're using two different colours of thread, one in your bobbin and one in your spool, your bobbin's going to be that colour, your spool's going to be that colour, so you need that to be as closely matching. I've got a blue thread, so it'll work okay. So I'm going to start at the bottom and work my way around and sew it, and then I'm going to press it again because I want a perfect lying seam. Now already I've seen a mistake because I've got these pins the opposite way around, and I'm going to start with I'm going to be doing it from the inside, so I'm going to have to bear in mind that these pins are going to have to be pulled out the opposite way. I could redo them, I could refit them and go back and turn them the other way, but I'm quite confident that I can do it this way, so I'm not really so bothered. So, and I want the needle to be as close to the edge of this bias as possible. And what you do is you stretch it a bit so that the bias is lying nicely on the fabric. Hoping you can see. there you go, that's it sewn in place. You could just stop there and then press it and then stop there, or you could do another line of stitches just inside on that. I'm gonna press it and leave it there, but you can see it's nicely pressed in there, nicely sewn in. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to press it from the outside just to make sure it just lies nicely. Give it a good press like that. And the same round the neck, just to make sure it lies properly. That there. And then I'll go and do the other side. That's the front. So there you've got nice bias binding inside, and I'm going to do the other side, and then there's only one thing left, and that's the hem. So that's the bias binding on the sleeve, round the sleeves, the sleeve area, sleeve opening, and now we have the band. And basically we need to take the right sides together, front band and back band. You can see I've just got a little bit of white here. I don't know if you can see that there. A little bit of white on that edge. So I've got to make sure that my seam doesn't expose that. Right side to left, right sides together. And they are tapered. So that's not going to work because that goes this way. And what I've got to do first is I sew the side seams together. So I sew the side seams together, finish the edges, and then press them towards the back. And so I have pressed that, press this seam towards the back. That's the front. So then to make me know which is the front and which is the back, I'm going to put that couple of pins there to let me know that that's the front of the garment. Then I take this, and I know which is the front because the front dips down, so that's the front of the garment. So I'm going to put a couple of pins there just so that I know. I can take that out later, but that just keeps me straight. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this like that so that most of it's lying like that, and then I'm going to take this bit, and that's the front there, the two pins are there, and I'm going to match them at the side seams. So the side seam, I'll put this thread, side seam to side seam goes there, and then side seam to the other side seam goes there. And then once I've got that lined up, once I've got both side seams lined up, then I can actually probably pull this, and it should be about right. No, it's not. Can you see there's a lot of flap there? So what I'm going to do is I may have to recut this a bit. So let's start in the middle. No, the best thing that I would do is I'm going to start at one end, and then I'll end up with an excess of this bottom band. it's not a gathered band, is it? No, it fits perfectly. So there's no gathers in it. So I've obviously somewhere along the line, it's been cut a little bit on the big side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go along here, carry on along till I get to the other end, and then I'm going to remove some of the band fabric. That's the easiest way to do it. So I go along there, carrying on, and you can see now I've got my front to my front. I can actually use those pins there and there, and I can use the ones on the other side. So those ones are there, and that's where I'm going to end up with an excess there. So what I will do is I'm going to get as close as possible to there, and I'm going to put a pin like that. Then I'll do the back of the garment and see if that lies better. Yes, that does lie better. So the front is a little bit on the big side, so we're going to leave that there, pin that. That's got that load of fabric there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that and basically if I match that to there, I have that much to take off, but I'm going to taper it that way because it's going to be to there here, but it's got to taper outwards to the bottom. And I'm also, and that by doing that, I'm taking in where this seam is. So I'll do that to there, and I'm going to cut that off there. That will not be right there. Okay, that there. So I've removed that bit there, and I'm going to sew down there and finish the seam off. So I've done that, and it now fits much better. I'm going to sew along the edge there, right the way around. So now I have, I've done that. So I'm going to over edge the edge of the seam, and then I'm going to press it so that the seam is going upwards. Then I'm going to top stitch along the edge of this fabric just to add a little bit of accent to it and to make it lie better. And then all that's left to do is to turn the hem up as much as you want it to be, and then sew around that. We will top stitch along there, and we open it all out, start at the side seam and work your way around. Start there, top stitch right close to the edge here, and away we go. I've sewn that up there. I've pressed it towards the top, towards the body, and then I've top stitched, and I've just done the hem here, turned that over once, and I've top stitched there. So I'm more or less finished, apart from just giving it a press, and then I'll show you what it's like when I wear it. And here we are. This is the finished garment. It's I like it. It's quite nice actually. The only thing is I don't like having show my floppy arms, so I think if I was going to wear it, I'd wear some kind of a t-shirt underneath it, which would then mean I could wear it for the winter. Made from scraps, so made from stash, let's say. So it's not too bad, and it reminds me of pinnies that we used to have in the 50s and 60s, where our mothers and all the older ladies used to wear these pinnies. So it reminds me of a smock top pinny, which is why probably a lot of older people like them. That was the New Look 6871. Would I make it again? Yes, I would, but one difference that I would make is, instead of adding this band to the bottom at the very end, I think I would add the front band to the front upper part, the back band to the back upper part, and then sew the whole lot down the side seam, so that I just think it would be better if that band had been sewn to this before I sewed down the side seams. But other than that, yes, I do like it. Again, as I said, would I make it again? Yes, I would. But I've got so many other patterns to use that I might never get round to using it again. You never know.